Well, welcome everybody. It's really great to see so many people joining us for our sixth Hangout. I'm joined today by my colleagues Nadia Sebai, who's the Executive Director at the Arabic Center, and Becky Harrison, who's our Events and Communications Officer, and Arti Budia, who's our Office Manager. So the whole team is complete, and we are, of course, joined by Youssef Kerkour.
Ahlan wa sahlan. Hello.
Ahlan wa sahlan. And we'll get to you in just 1 minute. I just wanted to let people know who are not familiar with the Arab British Center. Just so you know, the Arab British Center is a cultural organization. We're based in central London with a mission to further understanding of the Arab world in the UK. And we started the Hangout as a way of keeping in touch with our friends and followers. And every week we have a different guest. And we've started those Hangouts as soon as we closed our center doors, which is over 7 weeks ago now. It feels like eternity, but hopefully we'll be able to open our doors soon and you can all come and visit us if you haven't been there. We're a very sociable bunch of people, on the good day at least. That's it for the introduction. I'm going to quickly introduce Yousef, and I do apologize, but I am going to read from my notes because I have prepared for this. So Youssef Kerkour is a veteran stage actor and member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, who's worked prolifically on both sides of the Atlantic and across 3 continents. He's well known for portraying Syrian asylum seeker Sami in the Channel 4 series Home. For this role, he's received a Royal Television Society nomination and a Press Guild Award nomination. Other roles include in the BBC series Baghdad Central and Dracula, which I believe are both available to view on ITV or BBC iPlayer is the name. Yes. So Yousef, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're delighted to have you.
Thank you everybody for joining. Sorry, I just have to say I'm touched. It's lovely to see everybody.
Wow. Hey everyone. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, by the way, is we like to find out where people are joining us from. So if you could let us know in the little chat box, you know, where you're dialing in from today. One of the great things that we found with the Hangouts is that we're able to reach people that we wouldn't normally be able to reach. So we've had people logging in from Australia to the US to Italy and to all 4 corners of the world. So please let us know where you're calling in from, where you're logging in from. So Yousef, you are originally Moroccan.
Yeah, I still am.
Yeah. British Moroccan, I should say. Yeah. You tell us a little bit about your upbringing and where were you born and your education.
So I was born in Rabat, Morocco. I went to, my mother's English, my father's Moroccan. My mother moved to Morocco 45 years ago. She's, as I said, she's more Moroccan than most Moroccans I know. I went to an American school / international school in Morocco, and that was pretty much my upbringing. That's kind of who I am. It's a big mix of people from all over the world, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-everything under an international curriculum, and it was just a fantastic education. And at the age of 18, I moved to New York. I went to an American university. I went to Bard College in upstate New York for 4 years. I majored in theater and drama dance, to be precise, and then lived as an actor in New York City, and then moved to England and been here ever since.
Okay, wonderful. And so, I mean, just basic question really, but how have you been keeping yourself busy since the beginning of the lockdown?
Well, you see, everybody's lockdown has been about 7 weeks or something, right? Mine has been 9 or 10 because I had been working in Rome and flying back and forth. And the job in Rome got cancelled. And of course, as soon as I landed, anybody who'd been to Italy, I flew out the day that Italy went into full lockdown. I mean, it was right down to the wire. I got one of the last planes out. And so I had to isolate for 14 days. And as soon as my isolation period was over, the British one started. So I've been indoors for a long, long time. And I've been keeping myself busy with voice work. I just did a little lateral move, and we have what I can only describe as a spaceship in our bedroom. It's these acoustic panels and boards and everything as professionally as we can, but it takes up a lot of room in the bedroom. But that's where we do our voiceover work, and I do ADR for post-production for as my bread and butter, and that's kind of post-production has kind of carried on throughout the lockdown. It's the one thing that all productions have stopped filming, but they haven't stopped editing and processing and trying to get ready the things that they already have shot. So all that work is available, and I've just sort of been keeping myself busy doing that. And I have a 7-month-old baby who likes to punch and whistle, and that's kind of 90% of what I do most days. It's just trying to stay alive.
Wait, can you just clarify what ADR is for those like me?
Sorry,
Who know
so
what ADR is?
additional dialogue recording, or
Okay.
additional. There's so many different. Shabir will know better than me the actual technical term, but it's there's so many different words for it, but it's basically artificial dialogue rendering. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's where you put in voice to the image after having filmed. So either as a principal, what they call principal ADR. So when I film something, anybody films something, they will usually have to do an ADR session where they go in and they repeat a phrase that for some reason didn't come out quite right. There was maybe some noise, or they fluffed it, or a line has been changed, and so they've got to do it. So you have to match your voice in sync. And then you have what's called crowd ADR, which is a really thankless sort of anonymous work where you have to do that, but for all the extras in the background who have never said anything. I mean, in fact, when they film, extras always mime as they're in the background, and they don't actually say anything. So you go into a studio with 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 other people, and you just have to give voice to all the stuff. And if it's a war film, it's a lot of shouting, and you just have to know a lot about everything. And there's a sort of small core group of people that do that in London. And yeah, that's what I do when I'm not acting in front of the camera on stage.
Okay. That must be quite a different experience from being in front of a camera, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's I've been doing it 20 years, I mean, it's sorry to bring a damper on it, but I work for a friend of mine who's being buried today, who died from coronavirus. It's very, very, very sad. Jay Benedict, he was very, very well known and respected in the industry, and
I'm really sorry to hear that.
oh, sorry. I mean, it sucks, but that's who I do it for, and it's people I know. It pays better than a day job, but it's very, very difficult work, and you need at least 2 or 3 sessions a week in order to sort of make ends meet. And if you're one of the group, then that can happen. And yeah, sometimes I know many guys. My friend Kobna won an Olivier Award, and the next day he was shouting in the dark room with me, and it's sort of, it keeps you grounded. It's pretty good. You don't get any credit or anything like that. It's literally just a money job.
Yeah, just the many things that happen behind the screen that most people wouldn't necessarily know about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So since we're touching on that, then let's talk a little bit about your career up to now. I mean, obviously, we all want to know about the character of Sami Ibrahim, but maybe before going into that, we can talk a little bit about the types of roles that you've had before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I was trained in New York, I trained to be a leading man, right? Which is kind of the nature of dramatic training. You don't get trained to say one line and then go home. You know, you get trained to have your character, to find their motivation, to find the obstacles, to find the conflict in their life, to find their super objective, all the rest of it. And you hope that every role you get, you can apply that logic to it. Doesn't necessarily have to be a leading man, but or a leading role. But you know, you don't train when you're 18, 19, thinking you're not gonna be anything but the fucking, you know, the number one. Excuse me. So that's how I started. That's how I started my training. And when I graduated, I got a cold dose of reality hit me in the face, and I was an extra for many years, for at least almost 2 years, and then the odd bit of theater here and there, and then I just did a lot of independent film and independent theater that didn't pay anything in New York. But by the time I left New York, in 2 years, I had been in approximately 42 different productions, whether a film or a play. I'd been paid for 3 of them. So I give you this background to explain what I'm going to say next, which is I trundled along like that for many, many years, just wanting to work. So the roles I played didn't really figure here and there, but I was trained for one thing. And so I adjusted my thinking. And it was a producer in England when I first got to England I said, who am I to you? What kind of roles should I be going for? He said, how old are you? And I said, 24. He said, you're a 24-year-old male. That's what you should be going for. And that started me thinking about what it is that people see when I walk into a room and what I see when I look into a mirror. And I realized that what I saw in the mirror was one thing, but what people saw when I walked into a room was something else. And what people remembered maybe 3 or 4 days after I had been in their company was also different. And I realized people remembered me bigger than I actually am because of my height. I'm 6'5". And so in people's minds, I'm this big, massive thing. So I'm thinking, well, then there's only one thing I can really aim for, is the big guy. I can grow a beard, so let me grow a beard. And I started aiming for the big bearded roles, and that's what I did the most of. And I can speak Arabic, so that's my USP, as well as my height. And so the only really big bearded Arab characters that exist in film and television are the undesirables that we all know so well. And so I began my career playing jihadis and killers and anybody who either kills or is killed. That was what I did. And Sami was the first role that came along, which was a genuinely lovely, nice Arab, you know, who doesn't want to harm anyone who doesn't get harmed. Hi, Ragad.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's I don't know why Hollywood hasn't really kind of gotten over the image of casting Arabs only to play the terrorist role.
Yeah, well, it's Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, and I was in a production, very big production. We were all hoodwinked, you know. It became something. We didn't know that that's what it was while they were filming. It was a big Republican Party propaganda piece made to attack Clinton, called The Path to 9/11. It was very controversial, and we all played terror. I played the World Trade Center bomber terrorist Mahmoud Abu Halima. That was a big job, a really big deal, big job. I did that while I was at Lambda, and which also I went to Lambda, by the way, after when I got to England. But I played that part, and after, when we watched it, they really had gone Pirates of the Caribbean with the characters, and it's a perfect example of what it is. It's that we all love this sort of, I'm evil and I'm a killer, and I'm, you know, that there is just one facet to me, you know, the sort of the orcs in Lord of the Rings is something that people want to, that is so easy to place into a narrative, because you can just swirl a whole story around it, because it's very rich. It provides for narrative angles and directions and stuff. It doesn't have the subtlety and the nuance that is linked with reality, but it's perfect when you want to, weave a yarn. So in the same way that Pirates of the, you have these, that series just turned all the Arabs into I'm going to kill you pirates. And there's a point where one of the characters goes into a sort of terrorist training camp, and they are literally jumping over the walls going, "Arr!" It was ridiculous. And we saw it and we all went, "What the hell have we been a part of?" And we realized where all the money had been coming from and everything. But do you know what? As well, when you're starving, there's really not, you don't have much of a choice. And
well, you have to pay the bills at the end of the day.
You have to pay the bills. The responsibility is not on the actor to tell the story. The responsibility is on the story maker to tell the story. I took every one of those roles knowing that the moment that I have the freedom to be able to be discerning about what the roles are, then I'll know I'll have reached my second step up, which happened maybe two years before doing Home, which was part frustration and part, actually, I know that I can get other roles now if I turn this part down, know, and then there's reams of them. They keep coming in, and this is about an ex-Marine who is a teacher in a high school, and the high school gets run over by a member of the Taliban who and we'd like you to play the lead Taliban guy.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, I kind of know this movie. I know what you're going to say. I know what the ending is. I know everything about it, and it doesn't matter how much money you offer me. I don't want to do it. I think, and even people who provide a third dimension to terrorist characters, which is the way that's what started to sneak into the industry now. It's like, okay, we know actually we got to be careful about how we constantly present Muslims and Islam and Arabs. So let's give these people three dimensions. Let's give them a real depth. But the narrative is still the same. Yeah. So you have to be a bit more careful. But then again, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask you, do you see, and I mean, you've been in the industry for 20 years now, or more than 20 years, you said. Do you think this is a trend that's beginning to change, at least a little bit? I mean, are you seeing some changes in the way that Arabs are actually being casted for roles? Is it improving? Is there any hope for it to ever improve? Or as long as Hollywood is the dominating industry, we're never going to see any kind of different narratives when it comes to...
So there's a couple different threads there. The first most immediate one, you just mentioned Hollywood. I think Hollywood, being what it is, does always have a string to it that goes towards the counterintuitive and something. If they can feel a trend, they will go with the trend. The US military is one of the biggest funders of movies in America. And the US military's objectives are always going to be in the background. And that's kind of really what's been happening. It's one of the biggest, if a film has a budget, a big chunk of it will come from the US military. It provides a lot of funding for media and for entertainment and stuff.
Okay, interesting.
And I think that's kind of where this whole idea of Hollywood's portrayal of Arabs comes in. I'm a big fan of Jacques Chaheen's work, and the conflation of Arabization and Islamization, and what he talks about Arab land is this world where there is danger and everything's off and it's mystical and it's weird and and the rules are different, and it's I think that still exists. That I think, just to answer your question more acutely, yes, I do think there's hope, and I think it is getting better slowly. It's getting better slowly because the actors are becoming more sophisticated in terms of how we present our culture. It's starting to become more of a thing where it's like, okay, now be careful when you accept this terrorist role. I know, you know, because you're just reinforcing a stereotype that isn't helpful. I also think writing is getting better in general, and it still hasn't benefited Arabs or Muslims or people from the Middle East or our culture, but it will get there, I believe. The problem that we have now is that you can't talk about doing right by Arabs on screen if you don't do right by them off screen. And you can't talk about doing right by Islam on screen if you don't do right by it off screen. The attitudes still exist. The fear still exists. It's very, very hard for the majority of productions out there to highlight and shine a spotlight on Abdullah bin Khalid, you know, Arab Muslim actor from Iraq, starring in this. You know, they're naming lights up on the National Theatre. They're naming lights it's very difficult for Western productions to go there. What they'll do is say starring Jason blah blah blah, and then with Khalid or introducing Khalid. That's what they prefer to do. Now that's a way of controlling the phobia that still exists, and that I understand. You know, I understand the fear of the unknown, and our culture is very much unknown for a lot of people. That's what Jack Shaheen talks about Arab land, because Arab land is this world out there where the rules are different from ours. And as soon as you transfer to Arab land, it's everything has changed. And it's sort of like cutthroats and this and harems and blah blah blah. And
of course, it's this Orientalist view
the Oriental, yeah, and that still exists. So for somebody to write an Arab character and make them just as human as a Western character takes an understanding of Arab culture that is still kind of not quite there yet.
Yeah. Well, and I think also as long as the narrative about the Arab world and Muslims in general doesn't change in sort of mainstream media, I think we still have a lot of work to do,
of course,
till we get there. But it's I guess it's a slow process, like most things. So this takes me actually to let's talk a little bit about Home. Home is written by Rufus Jones, who is not an Arab. Tell us a little bit about the show, and tell us a little bit about your character. You play Sami Ibrahim, who's a Syrian refugee who arrives in the boot of a family car in South London. Tell us a little bit about that, or talk to us a little bit about the character first, and then we'll talk about the process of working with Rufus Jones.
The character's name is Sami Ibrahim. He's an English teacher from Damascus in Syria, and who has escaped and with his family. In season 1, we find out that he has been separated from his wife and child, who made their way separately with smugglers who have found their way to Germany. And he doesn't want to settle in Germany. He wants to settle in England. So he's gone ahead to England to try and get leave to remain. And as soon as he does, then he can bring his family over. And that's his plan. And he makes it into England by sneaking into the trunk of a car of a family played by Rufus Jones, Rebecca Staten, and Oakley Pendergast, the boy. And they get back to England, to Dorking especially. So he arrives in Dorking and lives with them, basically. He begins his asylum process and lives with them with the hopes of getting his family. So he needs to be granted asylum. And season 1 follows his trying to integrate into the country that he loves and he's always wanted to be in, and also get his wife and child back. And then in season 2 we see a stretching out of the process and the pressure that has on his personality and his character and his patience.
I'm sure you guys have seen. How many of you have seen Home on Channel 4? Raise your hands. Okay, well, those that haven't raised their hands, I highly recommend that you go ahead and watch. It's available online for free. So by all means, do watch, because it's a really, really great show. It's very touching. It's very moving. It's funny. It's got all the emotions that you could expect from portraying, or at least trying to illustrate a story of a refugee. So you're of Moroccan origin, as we said in the beginning, and you played the role of a Syrian character. How did you, and a Syrian refugee on top of it. So how did you prepare for the role, and how did you kind of learn the Syrian accent?
So the Syrian accent I learned from Hassan Akkad, who is the advisor on the show, who the story, Sami's journey, it's kind of loosely based on his experiences. He was an English teacher in Damascus who had to escape. He filmed his journey from Damascus to England, which was turned into a documentary called Exodus, and he won a BAFTA for it. He's the one that's been in the news now, disinfecting NHS wards and everything, and it's the story sort of has made the rounds. He's a fantastic guy. He's a lovely, lovely guy, very sweet man whose story is almost exactly like Sami's. And so it was important that Sami, when he speaks Syrian, speaks with a Damascus accent. So, as you can imagine, Hassan was, integral to that. In terms of preparation for the role, the trap I found, going straight to the problems, the hole that I fell into early on was reading about the Syrian conflict in Syria and the conflict and the conflict and the conflict. That actually, that's not how you prepare for a character. So I found myself quite late actually going further back and just reading about Syria, just life in Syria, what it's like, what the streets are like. I looked at a lot of maps, a lot of pictures before the bombardments, before half the country was laid to waste. And then I started asking Hassan about his experiences once he arrived in England. And I remember the stuff I wanted to know was, what does a refugee camp smell like? What is the prevailing odor? What is the prevailing feeling you have? I used to go camping a lot when I was a kid, and all I remember is being wet. And I wondered, is it the same thing? Are you dry? Do you have a change of clothes? And so when he said things like, it smells like feces, you smell feces all the time because pipes burst and it was raining a lot, so you're cold and you don't change your clothes. I thought, wow, okay, that's a very strong image for that particular camp that he had been describing, where Sami had been. And then I said, I wanted to know what did it feel like when you finally made it into England and you put your head on the pillow on that first night in that home that you stayed in. What is that feeling? So it's all that really kinetic, really deep emotional stuff that I wanted to unpick. And as soon as I had done kind of a bit of that groundwork, I then left it alone and I just looked at the script. And like I say, the conflict is such a big presence. And the important things are not that there's a conflict in Syria. The important things are this person is separated from his wife and child. And what does that feel like? What does it feel like, the feeling that your child is growing old without you there, and that they might forget you, all this stuff. And I just piled all of that negative thought, just worry, one on top of the other, until I had this whole little storm brewing. and then the character is very easy, then all you have to do is put that in the center of the character, and then not ever let it out, and just act like everything is fine. And that way, every time you speak, hopefully people can hear you smiling and laughing and joking, but they can see that inside there's a storm that is tearing you apart, which is, believe it or not, exactly what all these men and women and children living in exile feel.
Yeah. And so how did Hassan react to the initial idea that this was going to be a comedy? Was he, because obviously talking about a refugee experience is never a funny one. It's quite a tragic one in a lot of cases. So was he open to the idea that he would be sort of helping on a show that would actually be a comedy as opposed to...
I think the word comedy is what makes everybody go, huh? But actually, if you think about it, comedy can go places that drama can't. It can talk about things in ways that you can't do if it's too on the nose with drama. It also, as you can see, is not really a comedy. We call it a comedy, but it's a mix between the two, really. There's some funny bits.
Yeah.
And the humor is rarely about the fundamentals of the situation. The humor is situational. Hassan, I think, was absolutely, from what I gather, was fine with it. If there was any concern, he had concern about the portrayal, like I did. And certainly there were things in the original draft that I wanted changed, because I thought I can't do that. There were scenes with the Muslim prayer, and there was a bit of clash of cultures between Rufus's approach and everything. And I know you're laughing, but that's
actually a really funny scene.
Yeah, so that was changed almost on the day. I mean, Shabir that was on the day we changed that, didn't we, Shabir? From the original scene where he was supposed to be praying, because it was.
I think so. I think so. I can't fully remember what the specifics was on the day in terms of, because there were discussions that went on.
It went on right down to the wire, and I think originally Sami was supposed to, because he's Christian and not Muslim, which again isn't something that flipped the expectation on its head.
Mm-hmm.
He originally was supposed to fake a Muslim prayer and just speak gibberish and blabber away while doing it, and that was supposed to be the comedy. And I just said to Rufus, "That's not funny. it's funny to you, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
And please don't make me do that." And I just said, "Look, this is not. It sent the wrong image." And blah blah blah. And I said, "This is why doesn't he shout?" And then even then, if you'll notice, if you have Arabic heritage, you'll notice that I'm basically singing an Arabic song.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a fake muddin and muezzin.
No,
right?
Not at all. Which is what's funny. You're singing,
which
about
is also
you're seeing within your space.
Exactly, but but that's what they wanted. They wanted a fake muddin, and I said that's kind of like the fake praying. And I just said, okay, and then I just had a thought: all the Arabs will hear me singing, and all the people in England will hear me doing a muezzin, because Arabic singing is Arabic chanty singing is Arabic chanty singing. So I thought, okay, this is the perfect middle ground, and it works. And then when we realized, actually, then we do need a real prayer inserted into there. So Sami does his thing, he tries to mug, and then we did a little bit of improv about the Buddhist throw on the wall, which is a lovely touch, and the exercise bike, and then a serious moment. And I think that's the key here: is any funny moment, it was always backed up with something more serious and more fundamentally true, like Jackie Chan, basically. One serious moment, funny moment, serious moment, funny moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's really well balanced. Again, I'm going to say it, but it's a really great show. So I highly recommend that.
It's a feel good show. Surprisingly, it
has tough moments. Like I'm going to be honest. Like there were times where it was kind of difficult not to shed a couple of tears, but then that's always counterbalanced with some laughter. So So yeah, please do watch this show. I'm just gonna ask you one last question, and I think we're gonna go with the audience in just a minute. But my last question is, how did viewers respond to this show? I guess because this was written just I think post Brexit at a time sort of.
It was written post-Brexit. It was written at the time. Rufus just had to write it. It was at the time when Katie Hopkins was calling refugees cockroaches and talking about gunning them down in the ocean and all this stuff. And no one was saying anything. She was still getting all her jobs and everything. And it just, this feeling was starting to foment. And this was pre-Brexit, I think, actually. It was in the run. Yeah, it was in the run-up. Exactly. It was sort of anti-migrant sentiment. There was a point a couple years ago where it felt like it was just boiling over. You know, it's the reason why that poster that Farage had with all the people, the migrants coming over. It's the reason that was so powerful to a lot of part of the country, because it was just built up. And then Rufus just thought, I have to write something in response to this. And so he wrote a story that humanized the refugee story, humanized the refugee.
And how did viewers respond to it?
The viewers responded almost universally positively. All the negative stuff was, as usual, people who hadn't watched it and decided they weren't going to watch it. And in fact, in season 2, when season 2 came out, a lot of the right-wing press, and I'm sorry to say right-wing press, it's a very, it's not the right words. I don't have the vocabulary to be more subtle about it. But a lot of the press that is usually quite harsh and more conservative when it comes to immigration and all that stuff, they all wrote roughly the same review. Oh my God, this came out last year and I decided not to watch it because, come on, a comedy about a refugee. But being bored and being blah, 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 I decided to watch season 2. How wrong I was. I went back and watched the whole thing and it's wonderful. I highly recommend it. So that's the response from people that kind of didn't watch it the first time, who then discovered it the second time around. And then everybody that watched it the first time, I think that's what got us a second season. Even though we didn't have the crazy numbers that Dairy Girls had, we had almost universal love for the show. And it's very easy not to like it because it's just a sweet, gentle, you know, it's a nice show. It's got some nice it's very funny moments, feel good, and people enjoy being entertained by it. And that was my thing as well. You know, we're putting on this thing. People are giving you their time to watch, and people from all walks of life are going to watch you. When you're an entertainer, an actor, and you work in the business, your audience is made up from people that vote Brexit, they vote Remain, they vote Conservative, Labour, they have slightly racist feelings, they have they hate racists. It's just a mix of all different people, and so the approach has to be something that entertains all of them. You have to give something for everyone, and life is hard, bills are high, people work their tail ends off. When they come home and they make a cup of tea and they put their feet up, if they choose your show to watch, then you have to remember that. You have to give them something entertaining. And that's what I would say about the show, is that it entertains. And I'm very, very proud of that, you know, and I'm proud of all the people that have gotten in touch, and the fans of the show and the people online are so unbelievably supportive, you know. It's felt lovely, you know.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been really great talking to you. We're going to jump in now for a few questions from the audience. Joseph had a question. I guess it very much relates to my last question, but he is asking specifically, how did the refugee community react to it?
I'm thrilled to say, that they were very happy about it. A lot of people, I kept getting a lot of calls from Syrian families saying, I just sat here with my grandmother and we watched it, and oh my God, I didn't know you were Syrian, and blah blah blah, and your Arabic was great. That's all I needed to hear, you know. You know, the Arabic was really good, but the Syrian dialect was passable, at least.
It was really good. I would have never guessed. If I didn't know, I would have never guessed that you're originally Moroccan.
I thought your Syrian dialect was so good. I really thought you were Syrian.
We were debating in the office, actually. We were like, no, he's got to be Syrian.
Look, I mean, honestly, that's my job done, really, you know. And that's an important thing, you know, language is the key to culture. And it was, you know, I know that. And I didn't want to mess that bit up. And I think when you hear your language, your dialect being portrayed and respectfully and accurately, it does a lot. It introduces you and your culture to the audience, to the world. And I think what all the love for home, like every single person that's reached out online. Yvonne, is that you? Yeah, I think it's Yvonne. That's right. That's #1 fan, Yvonne, right there.
Who's Yvonne?
Yvonne is one of the many people that loved home. Yeah, she's fantastic, very, very supportive online.
Oh, okay, I see. Well,
but everybody who said something nice about the show, online or in person, gives tacit acceptance to refugees and the refugee story in our country. You see? And so that's the thing that I think lands home, that you see this person living in exile portrayed humanely and kindly, and then people start to love it. I had people in my life who I know how they vote. They're all there, you know, and in my own family on my English side, who love the show, you know, who absolutely loved it. And all the friends of mine from the past and stuff who I don't talk to anymore because our politics are just not aligned. They got in touch to say how much they loved Sami, how much they loved Sami, the character, you know, not just the show, how much they love this immigrant. They probably never said anything like that about an immigrant in their entire life. And so that's where I was aiming, you know, really. It's fine to perform and get praise from people that believe like you, but to get that from people that don't believe like you, that's the key.
Oh, absolutely. We always talk about how can we, with our work at the Our British Center, how can we reach, like, we don't want to be preaching to the converted. We want to be reaching those that wouldn't necessarily know anything about the Arab world, or that have preconceived notions of what they think the Arab world is like. So that's a major challenge. And when we can get one person to sit in a room to tell us, you know, oh, this is an eye-opener, I never knew that, you know, the Arab world was this or that, then it's, you know, a very small victory, but it's a victory nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there going to be a third season?
Inshallah. I mean, look, that's the question. Our numbers, I would be very honest with you, our numbers weren't very good on the second season because it was all released as a box set. People consume media differently now, you know. Places like Netflix and Amazon and everything, they understand that a show is an investment. It's like an investment fund that appreciates over time, and eventually you get your money back. Whereas a television network is still on the sort of what were your overnight numbers, and people don't watch the overnight. I don't watch overnight. I wait till the whole series is out, and then I give it a year, and then I spank the whole thing in one sitting. That's kind of how I consume, you know.
So what should we do then to make sure that there will be one? Should we all write to Channel 4 and insist that they
100%
season? Okay,
100%, yeah.
Please write to Channel 4 and make sure that we get a third season in production soon.
There is a story. There is more. Rufus has a story that he's kind of finishing writing. It's there. There is more to tell.
Okay, great. Well, we're keeping
Inshallah.
our fingers crossed, inshallah. I'm going to take the next question now from Rishi, who's asking, during a time like this, when there is a shortage of work available, I was wondering whether you had any advice or methods to suggest for another actor to stay proactive or creative during isolation.
Yeah, a very good question. One I ask myself every day. A lateral move is what I would suggest. Lateral moves, plural. So if you don't write, try and start writing. If you do write, start writing. Invest in as best a microphone. I'm assuming that you say is an actor for actors, yeah?
Yeah.
For an actor, yeah. So invest in a microphone, as good a microphone as you can get. If you have to use I believe in, you know, there is such a thing as good debt when you invest in your career. If you've got to get a credit card to buy yourself a really powerful Rode mic, do that. Find a nice quiet spot and then start recording your own writing, or find writing online, or there are websites like Upworks and all these websites that look for freelance people, and a lot of them will need voiceover people. The voiceover world is massive. You could get a job simply reading the English translation for some Japanese tech company, and they will look for people to do all this work. And all you need is a good setup. You need that good microphone. That's why I say you invest in that bit. So things like that, do those lateral moves. And if this lockdown wasn't happening, it'd be very difficult to tell everyone, listen, I'm going to take 6 months off work and I'm going to go learn this other trade. I'm going to take an online course, or I'm going to take a night course. That would be very hard to do. But now we're all indoors, we're stuck. We should all take this time to learn something new, learn how to do something else, and learn another language, learn another skill that you can use to generate passive income when the lockdown is finished, website design, all this other stuff. So those are my 3 things for an actor: is learn and use something that you can use to your benefit later. Invest in vocal voice stuff. And if you've already got a microphone set up, start looking internationally for your voice work and not nationally. And there are many websites out there that are basically like Spotlight, but for voice. And it's full of, it's just a marketplace of people seeking voice talent. I would highly recommend just getting there, and check out Upworks as well, which is the freelance site. And then the other thing is move laterally into something creative that isn't necessarily going to generate you income, but is going to stretch your creativity, and the corners of your creativity will make them wider, and it will make you a better actor and performer when the lockdown is over. And I can't think of a better switch than writing and pouring out all your blah onto a page. And it does, and just spank it all out there. And it could be a novel, it could be a play, it could be a screenplay, it could be something. Try not to think about it as a money thing. Just get your creativity out.
Great, thank you for the advice. I sure could definitely benefit from trying to learn something new. I still haven't figured out what that is, but when I do, I'll let you know. I feel like there's no time. Like, it's crazy. We're all in lockdown, but it doesn't have to be enough hours.
Yeah, I believe, and I've got a 7-month-old in the house, so I get how difficult.
But it is definitely great advice. I've been saying I have to do something new because now is the time. Now
is the time. Where else are you going to be like, I'm going to go learn how to make whatever?
Yeah, exactly. When else would you have the time? There's a question from Lizzie asking, how did you manage your own emotions, having taken on that storm of emotions within?
That's a good question. In many ways, you don't want to manage your emotions. You want your emotions to be out of whack and off kilter and bubble over and spill over. And there's a way of doing it safely as an actor. It's taken me 20 years to learn how to do it safely, because when I first started, I was one of those, I would give everything. Daphne knows me. Daphne will recognize that. We both went to London together, and it's sort of you give the very depths of your heart to every single moment, but you do that over and over again, and then you go a little bit loopy, which happened to me. So there's a way of there's a way of keeping your hands on the steering wheel while you're doing it. You always remember that you're performing. This isn't real, but that you use your imagination. What would it be like if this was real? And so if you've prepared enough, then people should be seeing that tip of the iceberg. It should be that tip of the iceberg feeling. People see the tip of the iceberg, and then there's the depth of research and preparation underneath it. And you trust that. As long as that's there, you can trust it. Then when those moments start to bubble up, you can just go with it, because you know that it's imaginary, and it's based on the research that you did. It's not based on your own personal stuff, which is how people can lose their minds a little bit. But to answer the question, I basically you don't manage the emotion itself. Let the emotion go crazy, because it's great for the audience. But then I come home, and I'm very Spartan when I'm on the job. I I sleep early, I learn my lines, I wake up early, have a good breakfast, get to work, go back to the hotel, sleep early, wake up, and I just kind of did all that, and that has a way of tempering my my inner dialogue, my inner life, you know.
Yeah. We have a question from Yasmin, who's asking, alongside the difficulties for Arabs to land roles that have more depth and don't fit into stereotypes, do you believe that there's also a cultural restriction due to family or religious reasons for some Arabs to pursue careers in acting?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, of course. I'm my own example. You know, I told my dad I want to be an actor when I was 19. I was shaking when I said it. There's a reason I was shaking when I said it, because I was supposed to be a psychiatrist or a doctor or a dentist. And my
Arabs have
dad,
to be so difficult.
I know.
They really can't. I don't know why. They just have to be so difficult.
And I say to him now, you know, I have a recession-proof job, and there's no retirement age for me. So, you know, we're always around. Prostitution, drug dealing, and acting, recession-proof, and I've picked it. You know what I mean? Businessmen can be out of work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You know? No, but he was taking a sip of coffee when I said actor. In fact, I said I'm going to major in theater, and he stopped halfway. He stopped midair, and then he carried on drinking, and then he went, "You want to sweep streets for a living? Go ahead." Yeah. And I said that to my friends, and my professional actor, the guy I couldn't wait to start acting, so I was acting while I was at uni and stuff. And this older actor who gave me a lot of advice, and really kind man, Stephen Richard, and he said to me, he said, "You wait till your first paycheck, till you get your first paycheck for a TV commercial or a TV series." He said, "When that happens, you need to photocopy it and send it to your parents." He said, "Trust me." And it's exactly what I did. And all the chat stopped that day, you know, when they saw that amount, and my dad did his calculations and figured out the annual income if he did this every day and blah, blah, and his mind was blown. And I said, "See, you know," and that was 15 years after, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
But that's something, I'm waffling again, but in answer to the question, the reason why there's a lot of pushback is because of the security element. There is a little bit of it about the sort of the morality side of things, especially my friends in Morocco, my women friends who wanted to be actresses. It gets associated with like I said, you know, it's the three things I mentioned. And for that, what I've seen them do, this is not my bit, what I've seen them do is just reinforce the fact that you have a choice over what you do. There is a choice. You can choose what roles you take. And that seems to have helped a lot. And showing the paycheck. Showing the paycheck kind of makes the morality stuff bend. You know, it's like, well, okay, well, at least, you know, there's a lot of that starts to come into play. And like I say, the fear of how you're going to live and how you're going to eat is a real one. And it's one that every actor should have. And I think the counter answer to that, I would say, to that as well, is I would tell every actor who is feeling the pushback or wants to do it, make sure you really, really, really want to do it. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter how much pushback you'll get from your family or parents. If you will do it despite their objections, then you should be doing it. You know, otherwise, it's going to break you a lot sooner than you think.
Yeah,
because it's hard.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. Roya had a question. Do you want to ask your question, Roya? Wait. Unmute yourself first. Yeah, there we go.
Hi guys. Sorry, I asked it because it's easier if I read it off. I think we've got this thing about representation beyond actors and writers and directors. I think we've got a major, larger issue with the historical, cultural, and displaced people, how we are represented, the men of people, full stop. Professor Dabbashi, who's Iranian, he started the Palestinian film project in Columbia University. They haven't stopped slating him since because of his pro-Palestinian views. Another university about last year was told off for representing the golden era of Muslim culture. I mean, are you kidding me? The fact that we had scientists and writers and poets, they actually had a problem with that. So I think beyond just television, how the hell are we going to get films to represent when the narrative overall in the education in every way is screwed? So that's my thing that I think I wanted to raise.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll highlight is, though, you know, that you give great specific examples and they always suck and they always pack a wallop. But you find friends as well as opponents out there, and focusing on the supporters and people who are more open-minded is one great way of doing this. I know Columbia University. My brother got his PhD in Columbia, and I understand the kind of mentality that can foment there. And I remember always the John McCain caucus when he was running for president, and the woman stood up and said, "I don't trust Obama. He's a Muslim," and he went, "No, ma'am, no. He's a decent American. Not a decent person, or there's nothing wrong with being Muslim or anything like that." He said, no. He's a decent American. And that shows you the sort of mentality that prevails a lot, at least in the States. I think. Look, my philosophy has always been: you change the world one person at a time, and you live by example. And unless we have that as our mode of operation, we're always going to find ourselves in situations where we're trying to put on a festival in an environment that doesn't want us there, and you get that stuff. Like, what we should be doing is we should be thinking very big about what works. So me and other Arab actors and Muslim actors, we always talk about collaboration. Hey, we should do something together. But what we've only started saying now, which we realize, is we should be saying, hey, we should start a production company together. We should get a studio. We should start a studio together. We have to be thinking big. We have to be the gatekeepers of this stuff. And you do that by living by example. And we're going to get people's minds are going to change when they see our behavior, our way we carry ourselves, the way we present work, the profit we bring to the industry. And when they see that and they go, hey, we want to be like that as well. We want some of that, or we like that. We recognize that. We identify with it. I think the problem is the Arab world and the Western world have this traditional thing where they are so far apart that if you're in the West and you see somebody who's Arab, they are the other. They are different. And there's the fundamental problem is we don't accept the other. To accept the other is to accept ourselves, to deal with all our own stuff. The Arab is the most other that you can get, as far as a lot of people in the West are. So to get them to embrace us is the wrong thing. You have to get them to see us and respect us and recognize what we do as something that they do. And then it can start to change. And I say Arab, this could apply to anything, any different. Anybody who's...
Can I just say though, that otherness is a very mutable thing. And as an Iranian, who otherness of an Iranian 50 years ago stood for the greatness of our poetry, there was the Persia rooms in New York, and the same with Arab. While it was viewed with exotic eyes, that's fine. But now there is this negative, before it was just exotified.
Sure.
And we just thought, these idiots in the West, don't they see we are beyond the belly dance and the poetry? There is actually a whole series of other stuff going on. But now it's this dark gaze. When I see Homelands, my husband watches it, I have to leave the room. I am so offended by the sheer illogical use of names, places. They just put everybody in the Middle East in one shit pit, and we somehow meant to make our way out of that shit pit. Yeah. And I think you're being really, maybe I'm being a bit thingy, but you're being very optimistic. God bless you, Yousef.
Because I think the optimism is, first of all, it's a weapon. It's not an attitude. You have to use the optimism because you see the opportunities when they come. I think it's very important to keep that in mind, because, as you say, it changes. The otherness changes, but it can also change back. First of all, that's the first thing I'll say, right? Secondly, when it was just exoticized in the past, there were others that found that had the evil idea. It's all about who you focus on. All you can do is think about yourself and how you present yourself, and then try and find like-minded people and grow. And once you grow, you know, Black Panther came because enough people grew into that and then made that. And then all of a sudden people are going, oh, it's, oh, you can make a really profitable, oh, right. Oh, okay, right. And then it starts. And we have to do the same thing. It's that simple, you know. First thing we have to do is stop fighting with each other. I mean, that would be great, you know. And maybe the Arabs could just get along. That would be lovely. And we have to stop with this shit attitude that we have sometimes, where we'll, you know, I have family members I haven't seen in 30 years because of a phrase that was said, you know, and that's our life, and that's fine. But when we apply it to how we present ourselves in the world, we have to understand, you know, you have to glide your way in. You have to sneak your way into another culture and another consciousness. You can't just barge in. And I mean, that's a different topic, but I think that's the thing. The key is to focus on yourself, be a prime example of all that is good and great, find like-minded people, and grow creatively, and make your creative family made up of many different people.
Thank you for those wise words, Yousef. I'm just wondering, we've run over, we're 5 minutes past, so I think I'm just going to take, if you all have 2 more minutes to spare, I'll just take one more question, and then I'll let you all
quick fire the question. I'll answer them as quick as I can.
Okay, so this one is from Leila, who says, Ahlan, I've just started working as a theater director, and I know that me and many of my Arab peers are worried about the arts rebuilding after COVID-19 in a much more white Western mode, example, programming and casting, etc. Do you have any advice for emerging MENA artists to keep telling honest Arab stories that continue to break down stereotypes and really just continue to create space for us as Arab theater makers?
Yeah, don't listen to your fear as my first thing. You keep going, keep creating as normal. The reality after COVID-19 is not one that we know. We can sort of predict, but our fear will send us into different places, because you might think you're going to be alone in a world of white culture. There'll be a lot of white culture that doesn't exist anymore after this as well. A lot of the theaters that we did our work at might not be around anymore, as well as some of the shops we used to frequent. They might just be gone. So we don't know what it's going to look like, or it's all going to be fine. And but the important thing is, because you're dealing in truth and narrative, you can't worry about the fear. You've got to keep going, because there will always be space for the truth. That's what I think.
Yeah. Okay, and then last question, I promise, but this is actually a very interesting question from Wasim, who's asking if whether you think more stories should be told which highlight the nuances of Arab culture in order to change, educate perceptions of negative stereotypes, or would you say that more diverse characters should be portrayed regardless of background or heritage?
Both is important, but the first question is really absolutely 100%. The key is timing. You can make the most interesting, intricate story about our culture, and then deliver it to an audience that doesn't want to watch it. So we have to find the way in. Right now, I feel like we see the door as anybody who's has any anybody who's got ethnicity or ethnic or multicultural, another culture in them. There's a door that we all bang on and knock on, right? But it's the way in that's the problem. Everybody's got a key, and just the keys don't work, or it's just the way that you present the work to the audience is what matters. There's a reason why, and I go back to Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians and all that stuff, which, terrible film, but did very, very well. If you look at the leading actors, they look a certain way. There are things you have to think about that are very difficult discussions about about how you lure an audience in. And those things are fundamental to storytelling in general, to the entertainment business in general. We kind of already know the answers because it's been done before. I think once we focus on that and then try and slowly segue into presenting our culture, you know, properly and in a healthy way, that's that's the way we do it. But 100%, every bit of writing should seek to do that and portray characters with a depth and a diversity that doesn't. I mean, that's what we need. We need the writing to just reach that level of that quality. You know, good quality writing, good story. That's going to trump everything anyway. Sorry to use that word, but it's gonna be better. It's gonna be the thing that opens all the doors. A good story, it doesn't really matter if it's about Arabs or if it's about aliens. It doesn't matter if the story is good and strong and it's got a hook and you can grab people and people are going to turn on the TV, or they're going to go to the cinema, or they're going to buy the DVD or whatever, if DVDs still exist. If they're going to do any of that, then that's the thing that's going to save the day. You know, it's just good to make it about us, because then we can actually get on a train without worrying. You know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Yousef. This was
my pleasure.
It was a real pleasure talking to you. There's a few more questions which I'm really sorry we didn't get a chance to ask, but there's also so many comments that just take a minute to read if you have the chance. But saying thank you, how inspiring. It was a great conversation. They really enjoyed having you, and so did we. So thank you. Did either Becky or Nadia, do we have the link to the Channel 4 home series page that we could?
I put it in earlier, but I can put it back. I can do it again.
So make sure, if you haven't seen the show, make sure you watch it, and definitely get busy writing to Channel 4. We want to see a third series return, so we'll keep an eye out for that. And thank you, everybody, for joining us again on this 6th Friday Hangout. And Yousef, thank you again. It's been really wonderful. I'm sure everyone here really enjoyed listening to you and finding out more.
Thank you very much. No, thank you for listening. It's been fun.
Great. Inshallah, we'll see you in person.
Inshallah.
Yeah, we'll have to have you over at the center when we reopen our doors soon, hopefully, whenever that is. But yeah, we can continue this chat soon. Guys, thank you. We're gonna end it here. Have a lovely weekend. There will not be a hangout next Friday because it is a bank holiday, so we're all taking a little break, but we'll see you in a couple of weeks time. So stay tuned, and bye for now.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.